utopia. This world was not without its struggles. Life was hard for everyone. Childbirth was extremely dangerous, and many women died young. Social class was a huge factor. The life of a poor farming woman was vastly different from the life of a queen or a high priestess. There were still limits and expectations. But even with these challenges, ancient Egyptian women possessed a combination of legal rights, economic opportunities, and social standing that would vanish for many women in the centuries and millennia that followed. As Timor and Egypt changed, a series of foreign invasions and new rulers brought different cultures and laws. The Greeks, and later the Romans, took control. Their legal systems, which gave women far fewer rights, were gradually imposed on the land. Slowly but surely, the old traditions faded, and women lost many of the freedoms they had once taken for granted. In a strange twist, as history moved forward, the status of women in Egypt actually moved backward, and this leaves us with a fascinating mystery. How did a society from so long ago develop such a nuanced understanding of balance? How did it create a space for women to have a voice, to hold property, and to wield power, when so many of its contemporaries did not? The answers are still being uncovered, carved into temple walls, buried in the desert sand, and written on fragile papyrus scrolls. The story of ancient Egypt serves as a powerful reminder of a crucial truth. Progress is not always a straight, upward line. Wisdom isn't exclusive to the modern world. Sometimes, the most profound lessons come from the distant past. In the shadow of the pyramids, under the same sun that rose this morning, women once stood strong. They weren't waiting for permission to be seen. They weren't asking for the right to be heard. They were living as integral and valued members of a world that understood their worth. And that truth, even after thousands of years, still echoes through time. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey back in time interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from our incredible shared history. Imagine a place where the desert sands kiss the endless sky. Here, on the edge of modern Cairo, a monument defies time itself. The Great Pyramid of Giza. For over 4.5 millennia, it has watched the world change, a silent sentinel from an age of gods and pharaohs. When it was built, the world was young. Cities were just beginning to dot the landscape. Kings ruled with absolute authority, and the rhythm of life was dictated by the sun and the river. This incredible structure stands in Egypt, near the lifeblood of the ancient world, the Nile River. The Nile was everything. It provided water for crops, a highway for trade, and the foundation upon which one of history's greatest civilizations was built. This was the Old Kingdom of Egypt, a period of immense power, profound faith, and architectural ambition that has never been surpassed. The Great Pyramid was conceived as the final resting place for a king named Khufu. But Khufu was no ordinary ruler. Twice peopled, he was a pharaoh, a living god on earth. His destiny was not to simply die, but to ascend to the heavens and join the celestial gods. The pyramid was his launch pad, a stone vessel engineered to aid his spirit on its cosmic journey. In its prime, the pyramid was a breathtaking sight. It wasn't the sandy, weathered monument we see today. It was encased in smooth, polished, white limestone, reflecting the brilliant Egyptian sun across the desert. From a distance, it would have appeared as a mountain of pure light, a beacon of divine power. For nearly 4,000 years, it held the title of the tallest man-made structure on Earth, a record of longevity that is simply staggering. The scale of its construction is almost beyond comprehension. Over 2 million massive stone blocks were used. The smallest weighed as much as a family car. The largest, found deep within its chambers, weighed as much as 80 tons. And all of this was achieved without the aid of steel tools, without cranes, without the complex machinery we rely on today. The precision is what truly baffles engineers. The workers didn't just pile stones. They planned, they measured, they executed with a level of accuracy that is difficult to replicate, even with modern technology. The 4 sides of the pyramid are aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points of the compass. North, south, east, and west. Its massive base, covering over 13 acres, is astonishingly level. a feat accomplished on uneven desert ground. For centuries, it was believed that this monumental task was carried out by a massive workforce of slaves, toiling under the crack of a whip. But modern archaeology has painted a very different picture. The pyramid was built by skilled Egyptian workers. These were craftsmen who knew how to quarry and shape stone, and farmers who contributed their labor during the annual Nile flood when their fields were underwater. They lived in a purpose-built city nearby, were fed, paid for their work, and were buried with honor near the pyramids they helped create. This was a national project, built with pride, not just by force. Venturing inside the pyramid is like stepping into another world. The air grows still and cool. Narrow, ascending passages lead deep into the heart of the structure. You pass through the so-called Queen's Chamber and ascend a magnificent passage known as the Grand Gallery, a marvel of stonework in its own right. At its core lies the King's Chamber, a room lined entirely with massive blocks of red granite. Here, a large, empty stone sarcophagus rests. The body of Khufu has long since vanished, and with it, any treasure it may have contained. What's most striking about the interior is its silence. There are no grand inscriptions, no hieroglyphs, telling the story of its construction. No blueprints have ever been found. This complete lack of a record is the source of the pyramid's greatest and most enduring mystery. How did they lift those colossal stones to such incredible heights? How were they placed with such delicate precision? How did they organize a project of this magnitude without written plans or advanced mathematics as we know them? The theories are as numerous as the stones themselves. Some scholars propose a single, long external ramp that grew with the pyramid. Others suggest a series of smaller, zigzagging ramps. A more recent and compelling theory suggests an internal spiral ramp, which would explain the lack of external evidence. Yet, despite all our scanning and studying, the truth remains elusive, locked away within the stone. But the Great Pyramid was never just a tomb. It was a profound symbol of the Egyptian worldview. It represented the power of the pharaoh, the stability of the state, and a deeply held belief in an eternal afterlife. To the ancient Egyptians, death wasn't an end. It was merely a transition, a doorway to another existence. The pyramid was the key to unlocking that door. Its very shape held deep religious significance. The pyramid rises from a square base on the earth and culminates in a single point in the sky, like a stone ladder for the pharaoh's soul to ascend. It's also thought to represent the primordial mound from which the Egyptians believed all life emerged, and its relationship with the sun, their most powerful deity, Ra, was central. The polished sides would have caught the sun's rays, connecting the earthly king with the heavenly god in a blaze of light. At one time, the Great Pyramid was not alone. It was the centerpiece of a vast complex of temples, causeways, and smaller pyramids for queens. Most of these surrounding structures have been lost to time. The stones were repurposed for new buildings in Cairo, the sands buried what was left, and the relentless march of history moved on. But the Great Pyramid endured. It watched as Alexander the Great conquered Egypt. It stood stoically as the Romans came and went. It witnessed the rise of new faiths and the fall of old gods. Earthquakes have rattled its foundations. Sandstorms have scoured its surface, and for centuries, people have climbed it, explored it, and tried to unlock its secrets. Yet, it remains. Travelers throughout history have stood before it, humbled by its scale. They have felt a sense of awe, of wonder, and perhaps a little bit of fear. And they have all asked the same question that we ask today. How was this possible? Modern science has given us some clues. Cosmic ray scans have recently revealed a new, large void hidden within the structure, a discovery that only deepens the mystery. The pyramid continues to keep its secrets close. To stand before it today is to feel the immense weight of history. The hustle and bustle of the modern world seem to fall away, and you are left with the cool, silent stone. You feel the presence of every year it has witnessed, and in that moment, you understand the fleeting nature of a single human life against the backdrop of eternity. The Great Pyramid of Giza is a timeless reminder of human potential. It speaks of a time when belief was a force powerful enough to move mountains of stone. It is a monument to patience, to extraordinary vision, and to the universal human desire to leave a mark, to be remembered. It was built for one king's journey to the stars, but it now belongs to all of humanity. In its majestic silence, it continues to speak volumes. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more stories from our incredible past. For more than 1,000 years, Constantinople stood as the most powerful city on Earth, built between Europe and Asia. It was the bridge between civilizations, cultures, and religions. But by the 15th century, the empire inside those walls was dying weak, isolated, and alone. In 1451, a young ruler took the Ottoman throne. His name was Membi. Tuand, he dreamed of conquest, while others saw an impossible city. Mem saw destiny calling his name. He prepared an army, an avianda, plan that would change history forever. To destroy the walls, Mehmed introduced a weapon the world had never seen. When the cannon fired, the earth trembled. Stone walls cracked. Fear spread. The defenders worked day and night, knowing time was running out. Emperor Constantine XI ruled a dying empire, but his courage never faded. On the final night, the city prayed. Families held each other. He removed his crown and chose to die as a soldier. At sunrise, the final assault began. A forgotten gate was left open. The city was breached. The last Roman emperor vanished into legend, dying with his city. Mehmed II entered the Sultanate as a destroyer. But as a ruler, Constantinople became Istanbul, a new capital, a new era. One city fell, and the modern world was born. History is not just remembered, it is felt. Mehmed began preparing carefully. He strengthened his army, expanded his navy, and ensured loyalty within his empire. But his most dangerous weapon was not his soldiers, it was his willingness to change the rules of war. The siege he planned would be unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. To defeat Constantinople's legendary walls, Mehmed needed something extraordinary. He found it in the form of a Hungarian engineer named Orban, who promised to build the largest cannon ever created. The result was terrifying. The massive cannon could fire stone balls weighing hundreds of kilograms, capable of shattering walls once thought invincible. When it fired, the sound echoed 4 miles, shaking the ground and striking fear into the hearts of defenders. In April 1453, the siege began. Ottoman cannons roared day and night, pounding the ancient walls. Each impact sent cracks through stone that had resisted armies for centuries. The defenders rushed to repair the damage, using wood, dirt, and broken stone to hold the line. Inside the city, fear spread, but so did determination. Emperor Constantine XI knew the odds were against him, yet surrender was never considered. This was more than a battle. It was the defense of history itself. Outside the walls, Mehmed watched patiently. He understood that this siege was not just destroying stone, it was ending an era. Gunpowder had arrived, and the age of medieval warfare was coming to an end. Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos ruled a dying empire, but he faced its final days with courage. He had few soldiers, limited supplies, and almost no hope of reinforcements. Europe sent prayers instead of armies. Despite this, Constantine refused to abandon his city. He walked the walls, spoke with soldiers, and shared their hardships. He was not a distant ruler, he was one of them. As the siege continued, Ottoman forces attacked relentlessly. Tunnels were dug beneath the walls. Night assaults tested exhausted defenders. Food supplies dwindled, and morale was pushed to its limits. On the final night, May 28, 1453, the city gathered in prayer. Churches filled with people crying, confessing, and seeking forgiveness. Constantine attended one last religious service, then returned to the walls. According to witnesses, he addressed his soldiers, telling them he was ready to die with them for their faith and their city. He removed his imperial symbols and prepared to fight as an ordinary soldier. That night, an empire prepared to die with dignity. At dawn, on May 29, 1453, the final assault began. Ottoman forces attacked in waves, first irregular troops, then trained soldiers, and finally elite janissaries. Cannon fire tore open the weakened walls. Amid the chaos, a small gate known as the Porta was left unsecured. Ottoman soldiers discovered it and poured into the city. The defense collapsed. Emperor Constantine XI was last seen fighting near the walls. His body was never clearly identified, but history agrees on one thing: he died defending his city. By midday, Constantinople had fallen. After 1,123 years, the Roman Empire officially ended. Mehmed II entered the city later that day. He allowed limited plunder, as was custom, but soon restored order. Standing inside the great Hagia Sophia, he declared Constantinople the new capital of the Ottoman Empire. The impossible city had fallen not to weakness, but to shine. The fall of Constantinople was not just the end of an empirate, it was the beginning of a new world. Scholars fled west, carrying ancient Greek and Roman knowledge that would fuel the European Renaissance. Trade routes shifted. Empires rose and fell differently from that moment forward. Mehmed II became known as Mehmed the Conqueror. Under his rule, the city was rebuilt and transformed into Istanbul, a center of culture, learning, and power. The Middle Ages quietly ended in 1453. Gunpowder replaced stone walls. Old certainties vanished. The balance of power changed forever. Today, Istanbul stands as a living monument to that moment in history, a city where past and present exist side by side. Churches, mosques, and markets whisper stories of faith, ambition, sacrifice, and destiny. The fall of Constantinople reminds us of a powerful truth. No city is eternal. No empire lasts forever. But history never forgets. In the opulent yet rigid world of Buckingham Palace, the British royal family has always projected an image of flawless perfection, a divine institution untouched by human frailty. But hidden beneath the crowns and ceremonies lies a profound secret twin that exposes the heartbreaking costs of maintaining that illusion. Picture a young prince, born into unimaginable privilege as the youngest son of King George V and Queen Mary, only to be quietly removed from history because his imperfections threaten the throne's untarnished reputation. This is the tragic tale of Prince John, affectionately called Joni, whose epilepsy and developmental challenges led to a systematic erasure from public view. As his condition emerged in childhood, the royals faced an impossible choice: reveal their vulnerability or protect the monarchy at all costs. They chose secrecy, isolating him to preserve national morale amid war and scandal. Why hide a beloved child? What fears drove such drastic measures? Drawing from declassified diaries, letters, and historical records, we'll uncover how one boy's short life revealed the monarchy's ruthless priorities. Join us as we reveal the prince they tried to erase and the lingering questions about compassion versus image in the House of Windsor. On July 12, 1905, at York Cottage on the Sandringham estate, Prince John Charles Francis entered the world during the reign of his grandfather, King Edward VII, the youngest of 6 children born to the then Prince and Princess of Wales later. King George V and Queen Mary, he was 6th in line to the throne. Christened in the Church of St. Mary Magdalene, Johnny was surrounded by siblings: Edward, Albert, Mary, Henry, and George. Family photos from those early years show a cherubic boy with bright eyes and a playful smile, fully integrated into royal life. He spent idyllic days in the nursery under Nanny Charlotte Lalabille, playing with his brothers and sister amid the vast estate's gardens. His parents, though formal, showed affection. George V was a devoted father, and Queen Mary encouraged closeness. Johnny appeared in public frequently, charming relatives at gatherings. The Edwardian era demanded royal perfection as symbols of empire, but in these innocent years, no one foresaw the shadows ahead. He was a happy, mischievous child, loved and visible, a true member of the Windsor dynasty before fate intervened. By age 4, around 1909, subtle changes appeared in Prince Johnny's behavior. Described as winsome and painfully slow, he showed developmental delays that puzzled his family. Then came the first epileptic seizure, terrifying event, in an era when epilepsy was misunderstood, often stigmatized as mental illness or a curse. Modern historians suggest he may also have had autism spectrum traits, evident in repetitive behaviors and social challenges. Queen Mary's private letters reveal her growing concern, calling him a dear little boy while fearing for his future. Society viewed such conditions harshly. Eugenics ideas influenced the aristocracy, raising alarms about tainted bloodlines. The royals hoped the seizures would lessen, as with some relatives, but they worsened. Johnny remained part of family life, appearing in portraits and events, but risks mounted. He missed his parents' 1911 coronation due to health fears, though cynics whispered it protected the image. Doctors offered little help. Epilepsy lacked effective treatments. This period marked the beginning of heartache, as love clashed with duty in a family bound by public expectation. As seizures increased and developmental issues became clearer, the royal family faced a painful crossroads by 1913. Prince Johnny, now 8, no longer appeared in official photographs or public events. To shield him from scrutiny and provide a calmer environment, he was moved to Wood Farm, a modest house on the Sandringham estate. This wasn't immediate banishment. He had been visible publicly until age 11, when his condition severely worsened. Devoted nanny Lala Bill accompanied him, becoming his primary caregiver and surrogate mother. Queen Mary broke tradition by inviting local children as playmates, ensuring companionship. Historical records show this as protective, not cruel, common for epileptics then, who often faced institutions. Wartime austerity and anti-German sentiment, leading to the Windsor name change, heightened pressures. Any weakness could undermine morale. Diaries indicate parental love persisted through visits. Yet, isolation began the erasure, prioritizing monarchy's strength over full inclusion. It was a mercy in harsh times, sparing Johnny judgment while heartbreaking for all. At Wood Farm, Prince Johnny found a peaceful, structured life away from palace rigors. Surrounded by gardens, he had his own plot tended with help. He spent days outdoors, planting flowers and playing. Lala Bill provided unwavering care, reading to him and organizing gentle activities. He enjoyed toy soldiers, walks, and drives, with trusted staff like coachman Thomas Hever. Family visits continued. Siblings adored his playful spirit, and parents arrived regularly. Queen Alexandra maintained a special garden for him at Sandringham. Local children joined 4 games, offering rare friendship. Despite limitations, no formal school due to challenges, Johnny thrived in simplicity. Described as optimistic and affectionate, he wrote tender letters to relatives, showing sensitivity. Photos capture a tall, happy boy in this haven, though secluded after 1916 for health. Records portray contentment, not misery. Wood Farm offered the best possible life under circumstances, emphasizing care over concealment alone. It humanizes the lost prince as joyful amid constraints. World War I erupted in 1914, transforming Britain and intensifying royal pressures. As King George V rallied the nation, anti-German hysteria targeted the family's Saxe-Coburg roots, prompting d. 1917 name change to Windsor. Prince Johnny, isolated at Wood Farm, felt the war's echoes, indirect rationing, absent staff, and family absences. His condition worsened. Seizures grew frequent and severe, limiting mobility. Public morale demanded royal strength. Revealing fragility risked scandal. Yet, he spent Christmas 1918 with family at Sandringham. A brief reunion. Propaganda painted enemies cruelly, mirroring societal stigma toward disabilities. Johnny's world shrank further, but Lala's devotion anchored him. Parallels emerged with cousin Tsarevich, Alexei's hemophilia in Russia, hidden differently amid revolution. The war underscored the monarchy's image obsession, justifying Johnny's seclusion as national necessity. It was a time of loss for all, amplifying one boy's quiet struggle within global turmoil. Despite isolation, Prince Johnny remained connected to his family through cherished visits. Siblings like Prince George swore protection, sharing tender moments. Queen Mary arrived often, her diaries noting affection amid sorrow. King George V showed kindness, interested in his son's welfare. Grandmother Queen Alexandra's garden delighted him. Anecdotes revealed Johnny's charm, mischievous yet loving, writing notes like "Nanny, I love you." Local playmates brought joy, defying strict protocol. These bonds humanize the royals, far from abandonment. Records show emotional cost. Edward, distant in age, knew him least, but others mourned deeply. Visits offered normalcy, games, stories, outings, in a duty-bound family. These glimpses revealed genuine love, clashing with era's demands. Johnny's optimism shone, endearing him to care. Such ties refute total erasure, painting a portrait of quiet devotion amid necessary separation. On January 18, 1919, tragedy struck at Wood Farm. After a day of good spirits, including a walk prince, Johnny suffered a severe seizure in his sleep and passed away at 5:30 p.m., aged just 13. Lala Beale discovered him peacefully, his face bearing an angelic smile as reported. News shocked the family. King George V and Queen Mary rushed to Sandringham. Mary wrote in a diary of great shock but relief for his restless soul, calling death a great mercy. George echoed this privately. The funeral at St. Mary Magdalene Church was private yet heartfelt, attended by family and loyal staff. Locals mourned a beloved figure. Newspapers announced it briefly, first mentioning epilepsy, publicly. Buried beside cousin Alexander John, his grave remained simple. This sudden end spared further suffering but left profound grief, marking the close of a short, challenged life. The announcement of Prince Johnny's death on January 20th, 1919, via newspapers like the Daily Mirror, was understated a curt obituary, downplaying his status. For the first time, epilepsy was publicly revealed, noting he passed with an angelic smile. Amid post-war grief, it blended into national mourning. No grand memorial, the private funeral reflected discretion. Queen Mary thanked staff faithfully, sharing sorrow, publicly yet restrained. The first break in the family circle is hard to bear. Cynics saw cover-up, but context shows typical royal reserve. It fueled later myths of inhumanity, yet aligned with Erisnorm's epileptics often hidden. The brief notice effectively erased details, minimizing impact on monarchy's image. Over time, this silence bred speculation, overshadowing a boy's loved life. The royal family's grief was profound, yet varied. Queen Mary confided deep heartache in diaries, later writing simply, "Miss the dear child very much indeed." She inscribed books in memory of our dear little prince for companions. King George called it the greatest mercy possible, reflecting relief amid pain. Siblings mourned genuinely. George felt protective loss. However, eldest brother Edward, distant, viewed it coldly as a regrettable nuisance, calling Johnny more of an animal in private letters later, apologizing for insensitivity. Lala Beale kept his portrait lifelong, treasuring a note, "Nanny, I love you." Staff and locals grieved deeply. Mixed reactions highlight emotional complexity loved, tempered by duty and detachment. Far from heartless abandonment, records show sincere sorrow, humanizing a family navigating stigma and loss in public glare.
She smiles, and the world believes she is fine. It's a gentle, polite, practiced smile. It shows up at family gatherings, in classrooms, at weddings, and in all the small moments of her daily life. It's the smile people expect from her, the one that keeps the questions away. But this smile isn't happiness. It's protection. Behind it, there's a constant awareness of how she must appear, calm, respectful, grateful. She learned early on that emotions, especially the difficult ones, are best managed quietly. Anger feels dangerous. Sadness feels inconvenient. So she smiles. Not because she wants to deceive, but because she wants peace. Because explaining herself would take too much energy. Because being misunderstood hurts more than staying silent. Over time, that smile becomes a habit. It becomes a mask she forgets to take off even when she's alone. And slowly, she starts to confuse this survival with strength. She lives between worlds, between her faith and her culture, between tradition and modern life. At home, the expectations are clear. But outside, the possibilities feel endless, yet so distant. She watches other girls speak freely, choose boldly, and express themselves without fear. And she wonders why that same freedom feels so complicated for her. She loves her faith. It gives her grounding, meaning, and connection. But sometimes the way her faith is presented to her feels heavy, more like a set of restrictions than a source of guidance. She asks herself questions she rarely says out loud. Who am I allowed to be? Where do my choices begin? Where do they end? This internal conflict creates confusion, not rebellion. She doesn't want to reject her roots. She simply wants space to breathe within them. Living between worlds has taught her how to adapt, but it has also taught her to be silent. And the cost of that silence slowly grows. From a young age, responsibility found her. Not gently, but firmly. She was expected to understand before she was allowed to question, to behave before she fully knew herself. Maturity was praised, but her childhood was shortened. She learned how to carry expectations without dropping them. Be the good daughter, be the example, be careful. Be aware of your reputation, of family honor, of what people might say. For her, mistakes feel heavier. The consequences feel sharper. She was rarely given room to fail safely. With each expectation, something personal was postponed. A hobby, a dream, a voice. She became skilled at managing everyone else's comfort, often at the expense of her own. And while everyone saw her as dependable, few noticed just how tired she had become. Islam speaks of mercy, balance, and dignity. But she often heard only rules. Rules that weren't explained. Rules that weren't contextualized, just enforced. She wondered why compassion was sometimes absent from the religious conversations around her, why fear was used more often than understanding, why her genuine questions were met with silence or disapproval. She wasn't doubting her faith, she was questioning its presentation, and there is a big difference. When faith becomes about control, it distances you rather than guiding you. She felt guilt for thoughts she never chose, and confusion for emotions she couldn't just switch off. She longed for a version of faith that felt safe, one that allowed for growth, learning, and humanity, one that saw her as a believer, not a burden. She dreams quietly. Dreams of education, of independence, of finding her purpose. Nothing extreme, nothing rebellious. Yet even these simple dreams can feel risky. Success invites attention. Independence invites scrutiny. Visibility invites judgment. So she learned to limit her ambitions, not because she lacked talent, but because she feared the consequences of standing out. Being too confident felt unsafe. Being too ambitious felt inappropriate. So she started to negotiate with herself. Smaller dreams, safer goals. Over time, she even started doubting whether her dreams were valid to begin with, whether wanting more for herself made her ungrateful. And the quiet breaking continued. She is surrounded by people, but she feels unseen. Conversations stay on the surface. Feelings are filtered. Vulnerability feels like a risk she just can't afford. She listens much more than she speaks. She comforts others, but rarely receives comfort herself. When she feels overwhelmed, she tells herself to be patient. Crying happens alone. Pain becomes a routine. She convinced herself that this is normal, that everyone else must feel the same way, that her emotions just aren't serious enough to deserve attention. But loneliness doesn't disappear just because it's silent. It settles deeper, shaping how she sees herself and the world around her. People call her strong. She accepts the compliment, but it feels heavy. For her, strength has always meant endurance. It has meant tolerating discomfort. It has meant silence. But now, she's beginning to wonder if survival is being mistaken for strength, if resilience is being demanded of her rather than supported within her. True strength, she realizes, shouldn't require you to constantly erase yourself. It shouldn't demand that you suffer in silence. She isn't weak. She is exhausted. And acknowledging that feels like the first honest thing she has allowed herself to do in a very long time. Speaking up feels dangerous. Not because she has nothing to say, but because she has too much. She fears disappointing her family. She fears being misunderstood. She fears being labeled ungrateful or rebellious. So she edits herself. She softens her words. She delays conversations, always waiting for the right time, which rarely ever comes. Her voice stays inside, growing heavier with each unspoken truth. And while silence keeps the peace externally, it creates a storm within. But resistance doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's choosing to pursue your education. Sometimes it's setting a small boundary. Sometimes it's simply allowing yourself to think differently. She starts finding small ways to honor herself, reading books she's curious about, learning new things, reflecting on her own feelings, choosing to be kind to herself. These quiet acts don't change everything overnight, but they keep her from disappearing completely. Hope also begins quietly. She starts reconnecting with her faith, but on her own terms, through learning, through reflection, through compassion. She discovers that faith was never meant to erase her voice. It was meant to protect her dignity. This realization doesn't solve everything, but it gives her clarity, and clarity brings a sense of calm. She starts seeing herself not as a problem to be managed, but as a person worthy of respect. Healing is slow, it's uneven, and sometimes it's painful. Some days she feels strong. Other days she feels broken all over again. But now she understands that both can exist at the same time. She's learning to allow herself grace. She's stopped measuring her worth by other people's expectations. Progress has become personal. She still smiles, but now it's softer, it's more honest, it's lighter. It's no longer a piece of armor. It's an expression. Her reality is complex. Her journey is unfinished. But she is no longer invisible to herself, and that changes everything. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.
In ancient Egypt, sound was never random. Every tone, rhythm, and vibration carried meaning. Long before written musical theory existed, Egyptians believed sound was a fundamental force of the universe, capable of shaping reality itself. Creation myths even described the world beginning with a divine utterance, a sacred vibration that brought order out of chaos. Music was deeply woven into daily life, temples, and state rituals. Yet it was not performed for pleasure alone. Sounds were tools. Priests used chants to invoke gods. Musicians played rhythms to restore balance, and silence was treated as a dangerous absence rather than peace. Walls of temples and tombs were built thick and precise, allowing echoes to linger and amplify human voices. The Egyptians understood that sound could affect the body and mind. Low tones calmed, repetitive rhythms focused attention, and harmonies created emotional shifts. This knowledge was passed orally, guarded by priesthoods, and never written down. What we call music today was, to them, a science of vibration. At the center of this sonic universe stood sacred architecture. Corridors, chambers, and halls were aligned not only with stars and seasons, but with sound itself. Egypt was listening to something deeper than melody. It was listening to power. The pharaoh was not merely a king. He was believed to be a divine presence on earth, the living embodiment of cosmic balance, known as Mat. Because of this, every sound associated with him carried sacred weight. His voice during ceremonies was thought to resonate with the gods themselves. During rituals, musicians and priests performed carefully structured sound sequences around the pharaoh. Harps, flutes, drums, and the sistrum created layered rhythms designed to elevate his spiritual authority. These were not spontaneous performances. Each sound followed tradition, timing, and intention, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as the bridge between heaven and earth. Even movement created sound. Footsteps across stone floors, ceremonial clapping, and rhythmic breathing were part of the ritual experience. The pharaoh was surrounded by a living symphony that reinforced his divine legitimacy. Some historians suggest that these ceremonies may have altered perception. Repetitive sound patterns could induce trance-like states in participants, strengthening belief in unity. To the people, the pharaoh did not just rule. He resonated. In this way, power was not only seen or spoken, it was heard. Wah. The pharaoh's authority echoed through stone halls, carried by sound that affirmed his place in the cosmic order. Ancient Egyptian temples were not silent monuments. They were acoustic machines. Builders understood how stone interacted with sound, shaping spaces to amplify chants and control echoes. Long corridors, narrow chambers, and high ceilings were arranged to transform human voices into something larger, deeper, and almost otherworldly. In certain temple rooms, even a single chant could produce layered reverberations, creating the illusion that multiple voices were speaking at once. This effect likely reinforced the belief that gods were present and responding. Sound became proof of the divine. Some chambers appear especially suited for low-frequency resonance. When priests chanted in these spaces, vibrations may have been felt physically, through the chest and bones. Such sensations could calm the body, slow breathing, and create heightened emotional states. Modern experiments in similar stone structures show how powerful these effects can be. Yet for the ancient Egyptians, this was not experimentation. It was sacred design. Architecture and sound worked together to guide spiritual experience. These temples were not built to impress the eye alone. They were meant to be heard. And within their walls, a hidden symphony once played, turning stone into an instrument of belief. Sound followed the pharaoh beyond death. Egyptians believed the journey into the afterlife was complex and dangerous, requiring guidance at every step. Music and chant were essential tools in this transition. During funerary rituals, priests performed specific vocal patterns intended to awaken the soul and protect it from harm. These chants were not emotional laments. They were precise instructions, encoded in rhythm and tone, designed to help the spirit navigate the afterlife. In tombs, Carvings depict musicians and singers performing eternal rituals, ensuring that sound would symbolically continue even after death. Silence was associated with decay and loss. Sound represented life, motion, and protection. The burial chambers themselves were carefully sealed, preserving not only the body but the acoustic space. Some believe that the design allowed chants to linger, symbolically surrounding the pharaoh with sacred vibration for eternity. To the Egyptians, death was not an end, but a transformation. And sound was the guide. Through music, the pharaoh's soul was aligned with the cosmos, carried forward by a symphony meant to last forever. Today, the pharaoh's symphony is silent. No written music remains. Instruments have decayed, rituals ended, and voices faded into history. What survives are echoes trapped in stone and clues carved into walls. Modern researchers use acoustic testing to understand how these ancient spaces responded to sound. Results suggest intentional design, not coincidence. The Egyptians knew what they were doing, even if they never explained it in writing. The greatest mystery is not how the music sounded, but what it achieved. Did it heal? Did it unify belief? Did it alter consciousness? We may never know for certain. What is clear is that sound once held power equal to gold and stone. The pharaoh's secret was never meant to be read. It was meant to be experienced. And somewhere between vibration and silence, a forgotten symphony still waits to be heard. The red-hot iron left a perfect mark on bare skin. A circle burned deep, stamped with the initials of an owner, placed carefully on the left thigh where no tunic could ever hide it. The girl did not scream. She had no tears left. At her feet, the marble floor of the Athenian agora darkened with fresh blood. Just a few steps away, free citizens celebrated the triumphs of democracy. It was the year 430 BCE, the golden age of Athens. That mark was not the punishment of a criminal. It was a brand of ownership. She was 12 years old, bought for less money than the price of a loaf of barley bread. They say the body does not lie, and in classical Athens, the bodies of thousands of women told a story philosophers chose not to write. A story of a system that turned human flesh into property, sexual violence into law, and suffering into public revenue. A system so disturbing that Athens buried it in silence, written into law, taxed by the state, and avoided by the men who spoke endlessly about virtue. While Socrates spoke of virtue in shaded gardens, while Pericles praised equality before the law, while playwrights wrote tragedies about honor and human dignity, a few streets away, the most organized and legally protected trade in female bodies in the ancient world operated in full daylight. And the most disturbing part wasn't that it existed, it was that no one questioned it. This is not the story of a queen or a fallen princess. It is the story of thousands of nameless women whose broken bodies financed the glory of Athens, whose pain paid for its temples, its theaters, and its democracy. To understand how the cradle of freedom became a hell for half its population, we have to descend into the parts of history philosophy books never wanted you to see. To understand how sexual slavery became normal in Athens, we have to move backward in time to the 6th century BCE, when the reforms of Solon laid the foundations of what would later be celebrated as democracy. These reforms are remembered as acts of liberation. Debt slavery among citizens was abolished. Political participation was widened. Law replaced blood feuds. For free Athenian men, Solon's reforms represented justice, balance, and order. But hidden inside those reforms was a fatal contradiction. The freedom of some citizens was built directly on the total enslavement of others. Solon's laws carefully defined who counted as a person under the law, and who did not. Rights were expanded, but only inward. The system itself was brutally simple because it was meant to be efficient. Girls entered Athens through 3 main paths. Some were born enslaved, the daughters of women already prostituted, inheriting bondage before they could speak. Others were taken during the city's constant wars of expansion, absorbed as war spoils. But most commonly they were sold by their own families, when hunger, debt, and despair erased any remaining choice. There was no minimum age. Surviving documents mention girls as young as 7 being prepared for use, trained before their bodies, had even matured. Other records show higher prices paid for those who had not yet begun menstruation, treated as rarer, more valuable commodities, precisely because of their youth. Specialized workshops where human beings were sorted like livestock, bodies were examined, teeth, skin, posture, and obedience were assessed, but every one of them, without exception, was branded with hot iron. The pain was intentional. The scar was permanent. It carried a single message. This body does not belong to you. It never has. It never will. Their owners did not call them women. They called them andropoda, men's feet, a term that reduced human beings to walking tools. Under Solon's law, killing a sexual slave carried the same penalty as destroying a plow, a fine paid to the owner for damaged property. The Athenian state did not merely tolerate this trade, it organized it. Brothel required licenses. Every sexual transaction was taxed. Officials known as ostanoi were appointed to inspect enslaved women regularly, ensuring they remained fit for use. These inspections were not moral judgments, they were quality control. Tax records revealed the scale of this system. Between 15 and 20% of the Athenian state's revenue came from the sexual trade. And as if economic exploitation were not enough, Athens went further. It found a way to transform sexual violence itself into sacred ritual during the Great Diania. The festivals honoring Dionysus, god of wine and fertility. Enslaved women were not merely used during these celebrations. They were offered as living sacrifices in ceremonies that lasted entire days and turned a collective violation into divine worship. The system did not operate alone. It pulled nearly every layer of Athenian society into its machinery, not as passive observers, but as active participants. Slaves built and repaired the brothel, cleaning blood from stone floors before dawn. Artisans forged locks, shackles, and restraint devices designed for repeated use. Physicians performed abortions and treated venereal diseases, not to heal, but to return bodies to circulation. The law protected this system with precision. Owners and clients were insulated from consequence, while any attempted resistance was criminalized. Yet, the law also imposed disturbing protections for the enslaved themselves, exposing the system's true logic. It was forbidden to permanently injure them without the owner's consent. It was forbidden to kill them without compensation. All of this unfolded while the greatest philosophers in human history debated justice, virtue, and the good life just meters away from markets selling human bodies. Socrates taught that wisdom began with acknowledging ignorance, yet never publicly challenged a system that reduced half the population to instruments of use. Most did not live beyond 25. Their bodies destroyed by years of repeated violence, untreated disease, forced abortions with crude instruments, and the psychological damage of an existence reduced to function simply stopped resisting. There were no cemeteries for sex slaves, no funeral rites, no mourning families, no names carved in stone. Pregnant women carrying children conceived by unknown clients gave birth in the same rooms where they worked on the same floors under the same roofs. There was no separation between birth and bondage. Life began already assigned a price. The same laws that fiercely protected the sexual virtue of citizen women simultaneously legitimized the sexual enslavement of everyone else. Desire itself was not condemned. It was redirected downward. The Parthenon, eternal symbol of Greek beauty and wisdom, had been financed in part through taxes levied on their pain. Even today, millions of people walk among these ruins without knowing what paid for them. This is not the story of a fallen princess or a queen undone by passion. It is the story of thousands of women who lost their humanity so that a civilization could preserve its glory. Civilizations do not die when their temples fall. They die when their moral contradictions become impossible to sustain. Saudi millionaire wealth often begins long before business skill enters the picture. Family position, early access to land, and proximity to authority shape opportunity from the start. Oil wealth did not spread evenly. It concentrated quickly among those already connected. Over generations, this created a closed circle where wealth reproduced itself. The system looks stable, legal, and orderly, but it quietly rewards access over ability. For those inside, success feels natural. For those outside, Entry is nearly impossible. The darker reality is not theft or crime, but a structure where advantage is inherited so smoothly that it no longer appears unfair. It simply becomes normal. In this environment, access replaces competition. Entire industries depend on approvals, licenses, and sponsorships that are invisible to the public. Once granted, growth is protected. Rivals are filtered out before competition even begins. Failure rarely carries lasting consequences, because connections soften the impact. This removes the pressure that normally forces accountability. Over time, success feels guaranteed. When risk disappears, ethics quietly shift. Decisions feel safer, bolder, and less restrained. Power does not need to break rules when the rules already favor it. This is how influence becomes permanent without ever being announced. Many Saudi millionaires choose invisibility over fame. Their names stay hidden behind companies, representatives, and legal layers. Unlike public billionaires, they avoid attention completely. This silence is intentional. It shields them from criticism, scrutiny, and pressure. When no individual face exists, responsibility becomes abstract. People hesitate to challenge what they cannot see. Over time, invisibility turns into authority. The absence of a public image makes power harder to confront. What cannot be named cannot easily be questioned. Silence is reinforced socially, not loudly. Employees, partners, and associates learn early that speaking too much ends futures. Legal agreements matter, but social consequences matter more. Reputation spreads fast in closed circles. One complaint can isolate entire families. This creates a culture where silence feels professional and survival-oriented. People do not see themselves as victims. They see quiet obedience as intelligence. Over time, truth becomes optional. What matters is alignment, not honesty. Justice in elite circles rarely looks like justice in public courts. Disputes are handled privately through negotiation and compensation. Outcomes protect image, not truth. When one side controls money, time, and connections, fairness becomes flexible. Problems are resolved efficiently, quietly, and without record. This creates a belief that consequences can always be managed. Over years, entitlement grows. The system functions smoothly, but its cost remains hidden beneath efficiency and discretion. Public image and private life often exist in separate worlds. At home, there is discipline, tradition, and moral authority. Abroad, there is freedom purchased through distance. Luxury properties, private travel, and hidden lifestyles remain out of sight. This separation removes guilt. Home becomes performance. Elsewhere becomes release. The contradiction is not accidental. It is built into the structure. Living two lives stops feeling dishonest. It feels necessary. Extreme wealth reshapes psychology. Trust becomes rare when loyalty is bought. Every relationship carries doubt. Friends, employees, even relatives may have hidden motives. Security increases, but peace decreases. Many wealthy individuals live guarded lives yet feel deeply isolated. Money removes external danger but amplifies internal fear. The darker truth is that wealth often produces anxiety rather than freedom. The more there is to lose, the more fragile life feels. Family dynamics inside wealthy households are rarely peaceful. Inheritance battles begin early. Siblings form quiet rivalries. Love becomes tied to expectation and control. Children raised without limits often struggle with identity and direction. Parents fear losing authority over heirs who never faced consequences. From the outside, the family appears united and powerful. Inside, tension is constant. Money does not destroy families instantly. It slowly erodes trust. Influence over media rarely requires direct control. Advertising, partnerships, and favors shape incentives. Naturally, journalists learn what topics lead to opportunity and which lead to silence. Editors understand what stories quietly disappear. No orders are given. Dependence does the work. Public perception becomes curated reality. The absence of criticism feels organic, but it is carefully maintained through financial gravity rather than force. Saudi millionaires rarely keep their wealth in one place. Global investments, offshore structures, and anonymous property purchases spread power across borders. This creates insulation. Pressure in one country does not threaten everything. Accountability dissolves when assets exist everywhere and nowhere. Mobility becomes protection. The world itself turns into a shield, making responsibility harder to trace and harder to enforce. When power shifts, protection can vanish overnight. Political change, economic shocks, or internal rivalries collapse empires quickly. Former allies disappear. Silence turns into isolation. Many fallen elites fade without record or sympathy. Their stories are rarely told. This fear reinforces obedience among those still powerful. Survival depends on alignment, discretion, and staying invisible. The dark secrets of Saudi millionaires are not dramatic scandals. They are systems built on access, silence, and separation. These patterns exist anywhere. Wealth grows faster than accountability. Saudi Arabia is simply a clear example. The real danger is not hidden behavior, but normalized imbalance. When money outweighs truth, questions stop forming, and when questions disappear, power no longer needs to hide. As this story comes to an end, one truth becomes clear. The darkest secrets of extreme wealth are rarely shocking events or hidden scandals. They are quiet systems that operate smoothly, day after day, without resistance. Systems where access matters more than fairness, silence carries more value than truth, and power survives by remaining unseen. What makes these systems dangerous is not how dramatic they are, but how normal they begin to feel to everyone inside them. This documentary was never about exposing individuals or attacking a culture. It was about understanding what happens when money grows faster than accountability. When wealth becomes untouchable, it reshapes behavior, justice, and even morality. The result is not chaos, but control. Not noise, but silence. And silence is often the strongest shield power can wear. Saudi millionaires are not unique in this story. Similar patterns exist wherever wealth concentrates beyond public reach. The names and locations change, but the structure remains the same. The real question is not what secrets the wealthy are hiding, but what society accepts when it stops asking questions. Because when truth becomes optional and silence becomes rewarded, power no longer needs to explain itself. And that is where the real darkness begins. The Egyptian palace basks in golden sunlight, its halls echoing with the soft murmur of servants. The queen walks through the grand corridors, her presence commanding respect and admiration. But beneath the serenity, something stirs. Whispers of a mysterious figure reach the queen's ears. Rumors of someone daring to mimic her in the shadows. The impostor moves silently, studying her every gesture, her every expression, planning to weave deception through the court. Minor inconsistencies begin to appear. Advisors hesitate. Secret messages are tampered with, and small artifacts are misplaced. The queen senses a disturbance in the rhythm of her kingdom, a subtle yet threatening disruption. She knows that appearances can deceive, and someone within her own walls is plotting to undermine her. As the sun sets, casting long shadows over the palace, a silent tension settles in. The court is a maze of loyalty and doubt, and the queen realizes that her intuition will be her first weapon in uncovering the impostor before the kingdom itself is thrown into chaos. The mysterious figure finally steps into the light, wearing garments nearly identical to the queen's, her presence unsettlingly familiar. The court whispers, noticing subtle differences in her demeanor. Yet the impostor's charm deceives many. She begins infiltrating public ceremonies, manipulating advisors and servants with quiet cunning. The queen observes from her private chambers, analyzing every detail of this audacious mimicry. Shadows move across the palace as hidden messages and artifacts hint at a deeper plot. The impostor isn't merely a thief of appearances. She seeks to seize power and unravel the very authority of the queen. Tension rises as small acts of sabotage ripple through the court, a false decree, a manipulated meeting, or a misplaced scroll. The queen realizes that direct confrontation could expose her vulnerabilities. Yet patience and strategy are key. By tracing the impostor's subtle mistakes and deciphering cryptic signs, she begins to map out a plan. The stage is set for a battle of wits, where intelligence, intuition, and courage will determine the fate of the throne. In the palace's hidden chambers, the queen examines artifacts imbued with ancient magic, seeking guidance. Each relic, each symbol, holds clues about who could dare challenge her reign. Meanwhile, the impostor subtly spreads distrust among advisors, planting seeds of uncertainty in every corner. Courtiers whispering corridors, unsure whom to trust, while the queen moves like a shadow, observing and listening. Hidden messages, secret passages, and coded symbols reveal the impostor's movements. The queen deciphers patterns in stolen scrolls, discovering that the impostor seeks not only the throne but access to sacred treasures that could amplify her power. The tension escalates as the palace becomes a chessboard of strategy, where every step is calculated, and every gesture carries meaning. Guards notice anomalies, servants grow suspicious, and the queen's loyal allies silently prepare for confrontation. Magic and intuition guide her decisions, and she begins setting traps, testing the impostor's intentions without revealing her own awareness. In this delicate game of power, knowledge becomes the ultimate weapon, and the queen understands that uncovering the truth requires patience, cunning, and unyielding resolve. The impostor grows bolder, appearing at public ceremonies, imitating the queen with unnerving precision. Advisors begin to falter under her subtle influence, questioning past decisions and spreading doubt. Rumors swirl through the court, and fear threatens to destabilize the kingdom. Yet the queen remains calm, observing every misstep and every gesture. Secretly, she tests the impostor, planting traps and watching reactions. A stolen artifact leads to a carefully laid trap, revealing the impostor's hidden intentions. Palace corridors become scenes of whispered confrontations, coded warnings, intense encounters. Magic subtly pulses through the queen's artifacts, helping her see beyond mere appearances. The impostor, confident in her deceit, does not notice the queen's silent preparations. Each act of manipulation only strengthens the queen's resolve, sharpening her strategy for the inevitable confrontation. As tension rises, the palace transforms into a theater of cunning and treachery, where deception and intelligence collide. The queen knows that only by outsmarting the impostor can she protect not just her throne but the kingdom's future. The queen uncovers a hidden chamber, revealing artifacts and scrolls that expose the impostor's past. She learns that the impostor is not merely greedy but driven by revenge, envy, and ambition. The palace guards, once uncertain, pledge loyalty after witnessing evidence of the impostor's schemes. The queen studies mystical symbols and ancient texts, gaining insight into the impostor's weaknesses. Small confrontations throughout the palace test the impostor's resolve, revealing cracks in her confidence. A coded message leads to a secret meeting where the impostor's true plan is almost revealed, only for the queen to intervene subtly. The tension between deception and revelation escalates as the queen carefully maneuvers events, preparing for a final confrontation. Magic, strategy, and loyalty converge, and the stakes are higher than ever. Each clue, each uncovered secret, brings the queen closer to confronting the impostor and restoring order to her court. The palace teeters on the edge of chaos, and the queen must act decisively before the impostor gains irreversible power. The final confrontation begins in the palace's heart, where shadows and light create an almost otherworldly arena. The impostor faces the queen openly, her confidence faltering under the weight of exposure. Advisors, servants, and guards watch, silently as tension reaches its peak. The queen employs strategy, intelligence, and subtle magical artifacts to counter the impostor's every move. Every gesture, every word is a test of cunning and resolve. The impostor attempts manipulation and illusions, but the queen anticipates and counters, demonstrating her unmatched wisdom and authority. The palace becomes a stage of suspense, with dramatic visuals of chases, narrowly avoided traps, and tense standoffs. The confrontation blends physical action with mental battles, highlighting both the queen's resilience and the impostor's desperation. Each moment builds toward a climactic revelation, as the queen finally exposes the impostor's deception, securing her position and restoring stability to the kingdom. With the impostor defeated, the queen restores order to her palace. Loyal advisors and servants breathe a sigh of relief as the public ceremonies celebrate the queen's victory, emphasizing her wisdom, courage, and rightful authority. The palace glows in golden light, symbolizing hope and continuity. Subtle magical elements reaffirm the queen's connection to ancient wisdom, ensuring the kingdom's prosperity. The impostor is exiled or imprisoned, serving as a cautionary tale of ambition and deceit. The queen's actions reinforce the values of loyalty, vigilance, and intelligence, reminding all that true leadership requires not just power but insight and courage. As tension fades, the queen reflects on the trials faced and lessons learned. Her rule, strengthened by the confrontation, shines brighter than before, ensuring the stability of her kingdom and the enduring legacy of her reign. The sun rises over the palace, casting a golden glow across the Nile and the city beyond. The queen walks through her restored halls, her steps measured and confident, reflecting on the challenges overcome. Magic subtly hums through the artifacts, a reminder of the mystical forces that aid those who serve with wisdom. The kingdom thrives, but vigilance remains. The story of the impostor serves as a lasting lesson about deception and ambition. The queen's legacy is not just in her victory, but in her ability to see through shadows, guide her people, and uphold justice. Advisors, guards, and citizens alike look upon her with renewed respect and trust. The palace, once a stage for treachery, now stands as a symbol of resilience, intellect, and power. As the camera pans over the horizon, the queen's figure framed against the rising sun, it becomes clear that true leadership is not inherited, is earned through courage, foresight, and unwavering resolve. The story closes, leaving a sense of wonder, awe, and inspiration. As the story of the Egyptian queen and her impostor draws to a close, we are reminded that power is never simply about titles or appearances. True leadership lies in wisdom, courage, and the ability to see through deception. The queen's resilience preserved not only her throne, but the legacy of her kingdom, showing that vigilance and insight are as vital as strength. In every shadowed corridor, in every whispered secret, she proved that intelligence and strategy can overcome even the most cunning of threats. Her victory restores order, but it also serves as a timeless lesson. In a world where appearances can deceive, it is character, knowledge, and resolve that define a true ruler. The palace stands restored, a symbol of endurance and justice, while the tale of ambition, betrayal, and triumph echoes through the ages. As we leave this story behind, we carry with us the reminder that greatness is forged not by chance, but by the courage to face threats with clarity, the wisdom to discern truth from illusion, and the strength to protect what truly matters. The legacy of the queen endures, inspiring all who dare to lead with integrity. Every ancient civilization had a dark side, and human sacrifices were one of the most shocking. The Aztecs, for example, offered thousands of lives to appease their gods. But it wasn't just the Aztecs. The Mayans, Incas, and even Mesopotamians practiced similar rituals. The shocking part, these sacrifices weren't purely religious. They were also tools of political control, instilling fear and maintaining power over the population. Ancient civilizations developed technologies that still baffle modern science. Take the Greek Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old astronomical calculator, or the precise construction of the Egyptian pyramids. What's truly shocking is that some of these inventions were deliberately hidden. Scholars suggest that revealing such advanced knowledge to the public could have shifted the balance of power. One of history's most intriguing mysteries is the disappearance of entire civilizations. Cities like Harappa and Mohenjo-daro vanished, leaving little trace. Legends like Atlantis have fascinated generations. Archaeologists have found some evidence, yet many discoveries are kept secret. Were these civilizations wiped out by natural disasters, or is there a darker reason behind their disappearance? Egyptian pharaohs' tombs are famous for the so-called curse of the pharaohs. Ancient civilizations designed elaborate traps and warnings to protect their tombs. After King Tutankhamun's tomb was opened, several scientists and explorers mysteriously died, fueling legends of curses. But was it superstition, or did these tombs hold secrets beyond our understanding? The dark side of power has existed in every era. From the Roman Empire to Chinese dynasties and Egyptian pharaohs, conspiracies, betrayals, and secret assassinations were common. These wherein tomato rumors, ancient inscriptions reveal rulers taking extreme measures to protect their kingdoms and maintain control. History was often written by those who survived the game of power. Ancient medicine was advanced, but also shocking. Trepanation, or drilling holes in the skull, was used as a healing method. sometimes with fatal consequences. Alchemy and experimental medicines were kept secret, accessible only to the elite. The dark side of healing shows that knowledge has always been a form of power. Secret societies existed to control knowledge and power. From Egyptian priesthoods to Greek mystery schools, these groups held advanced knowledge of astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Ordinary people were excluded from these secrets, and even today, many ancient records remain undiscovered, hidden away from the world. These dark secrets aren't just historical curiosities. They teach us about the dangers of power, fear, and hidden knowledge. By understanding how the past misused power, we can recognize similar patterns in today's society. History reminds us that unchecked power and secret knowledge can be destructive if left unchallenged. Dark secrets of ancient civilizations will always fascinate us. We have only scratched the surface, yet the mysteries of the past continue to intrigue. If you found this video shocking and the opening, like, share, and subscribe to Global Reality Network for more hidden truths. We'll uncover more secrets in the next video. The night in Thailand begins quietly, almost gently, as the last traces of sunlight fade from the sky. The air remains warm, carrying the scent of food, flowers, and city life. Lights slowly appear, one by one, not rushing, as if the country is stretching before a long evening. This moment feels intimate, like the night is being prepared just for you. Streets reflect glowing colors, motorbikes pass softly, and conversations float through open windows. Thailand does not switch to night, it melts into it. There is anticipation in the atmosphere, a promise that something beautiful is about to unfold. As darkness deepens, the cities transform into living art. Bangkok shines with towering buildings and endless lights, while coastal towns glow with softer tones near the sea. Rooftop lounges overlook endless skylines, and below them small stores, a different mood, a different story, and the sense that the night has many layers waiting to be discovered. The beauty of Thailand's night is inseparable from its people. Locals move with confidence and ease, especially the women, whose presence feels graceful and natural. Their style is elegant without being excessive, their expressions calm yet expressive. Beauty here is not about perfection but about comfort in one's own skin. Under the soft glow of street lights, smiles feel genuine and welcoming. This quiet charm becomes one of the strongest memories of the night, leaving a lasting impression that feels honest and real. Night markets come alive like open-air festivals. Rows of lights illuminate food stalls, handmade crafts, and small cafes filled with laughter. The aroma of grilled dishes mixes with sweet desserts, pulling people closer without effort. Friends gather, couples wander slowly, and travelers pause just to watch. These markets are not just places to eat or shop. They are social spaces where the night feels shared. Time slows here, allowing moments to stretch and memories to form naturally. Music becomes the heartbeat of the night. Live bands play softly in bars. Traditional sounds echo from cultural shows, and modern beats flow through clubs. Sometimes it is loud, sometimes barely a whisper, but it is always present. Music connects people who may not share a language, but share a feeling. It fills the air with emotion, making the night feel alive and expressive. Each melody becomes part of the atmosphere, shaping how the night is remembered. Along the streets and beaches, conversations feel effortless. Strangers exchange smiles, short talks turn into laughter, and the night feels open rather than guarded. There is a sense of freedom, of acceptance, that makes people feel comfortable being themselves. Thailand's night does not demand attention, it earns it quietly. The warmth of human connection becomes as memorable as the lights and music, creating a feeling of belonging even for those far from home. As hours pass, the night refuses to fade. Some areas soften and grow quiet, while others grow brighter and more energetic. The rhythm changes, but never stops. Cafes remain open, lights continue to glow, and the atmosphere holds steady. The night feels endless, as if it exists outside normal time. This balance between calm and excitement is what makes Thailand's night so captivating. When the sky finally hints at morning, the magic does not disappear. It lingers in memories, in emotions, in the feeling of having experienced something genuine. Thailand's night leaves behind warmth, beauty, and a sense of calm wonder. It is not just a memory of lights and people, but a feeling that stays long after the night is gone. As the night slowly gives way to morning, Thailand does not say goodbye. The lights may soften and the music may fade, but the feeling remains. What makes this night unforgettable is not just the glowing streets or the beauty you witnessed, but the emotion woven through every moment. The calm smiles, the shared laughter, the quiet confidence, and the warmth of human connection all come together in a way that feels deeply real. Thailand's night teaches you to slow down, to feel, and to simply exist in the moment. It shows that beauty is not only seen, it is experienced through atmosphere, culture, and presence. Long after the night ends, the memories stay alive, echoing in your mind like a familiar song. This is the beautiful night of Thailand, a place where the darkness shines, and where every night leaves a story worth remembering. Before pyramids touched the sky, before hieroglyphs were carved into stone, sound already shaped Egyptian life. Music was believed to be born with creation itself. The Egyptians thought the universe began with vibration, a divine voice cutting order out of chaos. Every note played on earth was seen as an echo of that first cosmic sound. This belief made music sacred from the very beginning. It was not entertainment. It was alignment. When musicians played, they were not performing for an audience, but participating in the balance of the universe. Even silence had meaning, marking moments when sound was too powerful to be released. This mindset shaped how Egyptians listened, played, and respected music. It explains why their civilization invested so deeply in sound without ever writing it down. Music lived through memory, ritual, and repetition. It flowed from generation to generation like breath, never frozen on paper. What mattered was not preservation, but presence. The symphony of ancient Egypt existed only when it was played, heard, and felt. Once the moment passed, it returned to the gods, leaving behind only echoes in stone and art. Music surrounded Egyptians from birth to death. Children learned rhythm through work songs and clapping patterns. Farmers